So how many people here were just in Ernie's session?
Nice, love it.
So a fair number of people. How many people grabbed an Advil this morning after last night? More? Yeah. So you're feeling good? Cool. So welcome to Work Like an Attorney, Think Like a Developer. This session will be on advanced Zapier. We're going on the assumption that you know what Zapier is. You have a basic understanding of kind of how that function works and what you can do. But we're going to recap a few things as well. So if this is a new session for you and you weren't able to attend the first one, or you're just learning about it for the first time, we're going to help you out too. So to get started, let's do some introductions. My name is Tara, and I work in the customer support department in Clio in Vancouver. I'm one of the team leads, and I work a lot with people in Europe, because I start at 5 o'clock in the morning, Vancouver time. No excitement over that? Jeez. And I also work a lot, of course, with the East Coast of North America, given the time of day that I start. Before Clio, I should say I've been with Clio for just over 2 years, so, a little bit of time. And before Clio, I spent a long time working in law firms. I started working in a law firm as a legal assistant fresh out of college, and I did that for a little while. And then I moved into IT. So I worked in information technology within a law firm, mostly larger firms. And I did a lot of the technical training, mentoring, staff training, project management, sitting down with lawyers in their offices and saying, hey, how can I just make things better for you? Let me see how you work, and let's see what we can improve. So I worked in-house in legal for more than 15 years. So I know where you guys come from.
And my name is Raine. As Brittany said, I'm a staff developer at Clio. And I've been at Clio for 4 years, and over that time I've had the chance to work with a bunch of different areas of the app, moving from originally in the payments and billing section, and now moving more to more foundational stuff, making sure that we can scale and grow as our customer base grows, and as people add more and more matters to our app, making sure that we can support you as well as we can. And I've been writing software for the web for about 10 years. And if I could boil down what I do every day into a question, it would be this one. What can I make the computer do for me? And it's less about what can it already do, but what can I make it do? And what can I create? What button can I put somewhere to make your day better, or to build a script for me to make my workflow even better? And this isn't something new. This is what we've been doing with computers ever since they were introduced. This is a photo of one of the first computers in the US. It was used at the University of Philadelphia in 1945 by the US Army to calculate targeting tables and rocket trajectories. And when it was introduced, it took 100 days of work. That's 2,400 person hours. And it did them in a single hour. So there was this dramatic improvement in what mathematics they could do, and so there was a huge step forward for that particular case, but only a very few number of people could tell this computer what to do. It was very costly to run. As you can imagine, if you unplugged one of those cables, the whole thing stopped working, and behind every single one of those switches is a vacuum tube, and you have to turn every single one to program it. So
hold on a second. So how much do you pay per square foot for rent? You don't actually have to tell me, but it's probably not cheap. Imagine dedicating an entire room of your office to that thing, right? Yeah, exactly. Not reasonable anymore.
And so at this time, there were just a very few number of people who actually had the resources and knowledge to be able to tell this computer what to do. Fast forward a couple more years, and we start seeing a different way to program computers. We have these things called punch cards, and for those who haven't seen these before, they're a piece of paper that were created with this typewriter that would punch holes in a piece of paper to create a single line of code. And every single piece of these, one page is a single line of code. In order to use these, you have to stack them up and make them in order, and take them down to probably the basement of your university. They would take it, they'd add your name to it, they'd run it overnight, and if you had any typos in your program or any problems, any bugs, you'd get it back, it would fail, you'd have to do it again. Maybe find the problem, pull it out. So it was very complicated. Now, more people could do it if you're maybe in comp sci or engineering, but it was still a very small percentage
Totally.
of us.
Yeah, I remember a colleague of mine when I first started working in a law firm. She used to talk about the end of the day sitting there and setting all this stuff up. They actually had it in house, and then she'd feed it all in and come back the next day and just have her fingers crossed, hope everything did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, and then we had this thing. We had the Macintosh in 1984, and personal computers started to become a thing. You could bring a computer home, you could buy it, your friend might have one in his house, and you could run software, but you could also write software. Now, it wasn't particularly easy, but you could do it, and you could put it on a floppy, you could run it over to somebody's house, and then you could build software for them, and they could use it.
This is more recognizable, right? Did anybody have one of these or play with one of these? Yeah?
Any Dark Castle fans in the house?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, what about Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Yeah? I remember being in computer club and playing that and begging to stay in for recess instead of going outside. It was great.
Some very classic games. But generally, you didn't see people programming on this. No. And then this happened. The internet came around in the 1990s. And things sort of exploded. Not only were computers getting cheaper and smaller and more powerful, but we were also able to communicate with people and write software that people could use or websites that people could view.
Yeah, so what about a BBS? Somebody know what that stands for? Bulletin board system. There you go. Did anybody ever play on one of those? Yeah? A few people? It's not just me? That was a fun thing that I did in high school. It was like that first time where you could actually communicate with another person on the internet. I have no idea what we talked about or what we did, but we just talked to people because we could.
Yeah.
It was cool.
And then 2008 came around, the iPhone came around, smartphones became a thing. We then had more powerful computers in our pocket than the US Army had to do all of that more complicated work, to send people to the moon, whatever. And with that came cloud platforms like Clio, and an explosion of apps and APIs and interactive services. And with that came companies like Zapier, or in companies like If This Then That, companies that tied together platforms that exist on the web. And they wanted to do this so that people who did not program, who did not code, who didn't know how underneath the hood a computer might work, or know what's on the screen there does, could still program their own software. They did not need to understand all the details. They could just tie a few blocks together and get all the same functionality out of it. And that brings us to what we're talking about today. How can we think like a developer when we're building these things, but not have to learn to write a single line of code?
Cool. So let's get into Zapier. So how many people, I'm guessing there's at least, hopefully a few, how many people have made a Zap? Cool. We have a good mix. So for those of you who haven't done it before, essentially what Zapier does is it sits in between Clio and whatever you want to do, right? So if you think of all those other programs that you might like to use, all of those other applications that you might like to use, maybe Trello, maybe Calendly, all those kinds of things, think about how you'd like to connect those to Clio. Zapier is going to sit in between them and take things that you do in Clio and make things happen other places. Okay? Let's take a look at something here. Now, I've got kids, so I know what this is. Anybody actually play the game, or do you just set it up? But do you just set it up and then let it go, or do you play the game? My 4-year-old doesn't have the patience to play the actual game. So if you think about this, and then you think about it related to Zapier, you got the little silver ball, right? And you drop it in the top, and it goes through a bucket and lands in a bathtub, just like at work, right? And then that triggers something else to happen, and it rolls over here, and there's that little guy, that swimming, diving guy that jumps in the bucket and all that stuff. And at the end, one thing triggers the next thing, and the next thing happens, and it's kind of this cascading effect, and eventually you catch a mouse, ideally, right? Let's go to the next one. So let's think about that and have that in the back of our mind and take a look at a couple of examples. So sending a text message is something that Clio doesn't do directly. But what if you could create a new communication in Clio, right? A phone message, email message, that kind of thing, like one of those new communications. And then you could have it automatically send a text message based on that trigger, right? There's an example of one thing that you can do. Let's go to the next one. So what about Gmail? Now, for those of you who were here with Ernie earlier, he talked a little bit about this. So maybe in Clio, you generate new matters, right? You create a new matter, and it's in family law or litigation or whatever it happens to be. Wouldn't it be nice if you could make things happen in Gmail that automatically tag emails coming in related to that matter? So what if every time you get an email in your Gmail account, it turns a special color because you've added a label, and so it already knows, oh, that's a family law matter. That's a real estate matter. Might be helpful. Google Forms is another one that we're going to get into a little bit. So you can create a form within Google. It's kind of like creating a Google Doc, similar. And based on the information you enter into that form, you can have things happen in Clio, like a creation of an expense entry, or maybe creating a matter, custom fields. There's a lot of triggers available in Clio. So if you take a look at this list, this is things that when you do this thing in Clio, you can make other things happen other places. Okay? So taking a look at the actions that you can take with some of these. Maybe you create a new matter in Clio, and you want it to automatically create that label in your Gmail account so you can identify those emails are related to these types of matters. Maybe you use Slack. Does anybody use Slack at work? Yeah? We got a few people in here. So what if every time you created a task within Clio, you not only get a reminder in Clio, or maybe in Clio you have it sending an email reminder, but what if in your Slack channel it's popping up with a reminder? MailChimp. Is anybody using this one? Yeah? Do you ever create mailing lists, invite people to things, have events at your firm? So what if you create a new person within Clio, and then you add that person as a subscriber to your MailChimp account so that they can start receiving mailings, and then you tag that person with the mailing list you want them to be on. So this group of people is going to get invited to this event because they're our litigation clients. This group of people is going to get a holiday card. This group of people is going to get something else. Let's look at a bigger list. So we've got those triggers. We've talked about a few of them. We have searches, and then we have a ton of actions that we can take. If we take a look at this, you see anything that maybe you haven't noticed before? For those of you who've used Zapier? I see people taking pictures. You must see something. So you notice that we've highlighted a few of them. Zapier, the Zapier integration with Clio has been rebuilt. Okay? So if you've tried this in the past, and maybe it couldn't do quite what you wanted to do, or maybe you called us up in support and said, what's going on? Something didn't work properly. I really encourage you to give it another shot. Okay, there's been a lot of changes. It's been completely rebuilt from the ground up. And you'll notice there's been a few new actions and a few new triggers that have been added to the list. Some big ones in here that we're going to take a look at in more detail. So for example, something up there that says update matter. Update matter doesn't just mean that you're creating a matter and maybe changing it to pending from open or something like that. Think about things like custom fields. Right? What if you could auto-populate custom fields on your matters based on Zaps? It's probably a big one.
And an important thing to note, this rewrite is, we're going to be releasing it early November, I believe.
Right.
But we do have a beta that if people are interested, we can add them into that. So let us know after the fact if you're interested.
I see some hands already.
Yeah, I just saw a couple pop up. Or come see us in the Smart Bar or Smart Lab about that. But we'll get into some more specifics as we see the examples. Cool.
So if we think about all of the things that we can do with Clio, and I assume everybody here is pretty happy with Clio, think about all of those other things that you'd like to do, all those other programs that you're already using, and then take a look at this list, right? So just taking Clio and then using Zapier, you can add the power of hundreds more applications. I want to say there's no limit, but I suppose there's a limit somewhere. There's a lot. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that you could do. We're going to give you a few examples and trigger some thoughts there.
Yeah, so let's look at our first example. We're going to look at two workflows. This is the first one, and this is about customizing matters. And this will dig into something that Ernie talked about a little bit, and that's filters. So before we look at the Zap, let's look at what life was like before Zapier in this example. So you are in a firm, and you create a matter, and you set the practice area, perhaps. And depending on what that practice area is, you might do other things for that matter. So maybe it's a real estate transaction, you set it to flat rate. Maybe if it's a contract negotiation, you create a couple custom folders. So maybe a draft folder, maybe a signed folder, maybe a finalized folder. And there's a big long list here, right? Whatever you happen to do for your matter, there's maybe 5 or 6 steps that you might do for a particular type of case.
Let me give you an example. How many of you know what I mean when you say the red weld folders? Those big red weld files, right? The big brown accordion folders. One or two of you use those? Yeah. All of you? How many of you color code your file folders to go inside of those? And you might have, a separate one for drafts and final and searches and all that kind of stuff. What if you could automatically create or replicate that folder structure in Clio with a Zap? How many people do it manually? Nobody wants. A couple are willing to admit it. So you're creating the folders one at a time. Pretty time consuming.
So let's look at the improved workflow, what could be possible with Zapier if we implemented it. So you create a matter, you set the practice area, and then you go grab coffee because all of those extra steps, you've already programmed with Zap, and it takes care of it for you. So the key thing here is that filters are your friend. The only way you can create a Zap that will do something conditionally is if you add a filter. And to look at filters more specifically, it's something that's built into Zapier as a core functionality. So the basic fundamentals of a Zap is going to be a trigger and some action. But you can insert a filter in between. And a filter looks something like this. It has a helpful piece of text, only continue if. And then it's got these 3 boxes. Now, in this example we're going to look at, we're going to have our trigger be a new matter. So anytime you create a new matter, we're going to hit this Zap, and we're going to add a filter. And based on the practice area name, or whatever category you want to make it, this one is a music contract, we're going to say, if it matches exactly this text. Now, this can be whatever text you'd like, and I've chosen text matches exactly, but you can also do rough matches or contains or something. The options here are huge. You can add many different things. And the key thing to remember here is that if the practice area is not music contract, then it's done. It's not going to continue. Any action you put after this is not going to happen. But if it is, then everything happens. And so that's the power of these filters, where you can segment down exactly what is running. So let's add an action to this. So this is from the demo you can see, or the beta for the new integration, and we can upgrade the matter, or update the matter rather. So we've just created a matter, and then we choose that exact same matter to update. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set it to pending, and we're going to set it to non-billable. In Clio, this is what it would look like. You would create a new matter, you'd set the client, you maybe put a description in there, and then you'd pick the practice area, and that's the key bit here. You'd create that matter, and you'd see it, if you can see it's still open, it still is billable. But about 10 seconds later, if you refresh the page, it'll change to pending. You'll see there's a new update in the timeline, and it's also non-billable. And this is just the example I chose here. You could pick whatever you want to change, and that matter instantly changes. But we're not done there. This is advanced Zapier. The more important thing here is to remember that you can keep adding steps, and the more steps you add, the more powerful your Zaps can become. So we have an entirely working Zap right now, but if you want to do more, we can do that. So let's go back to that workflow. We'll add a new step, and this step is to create a matter folder. So this is a folder within your documents area for this particular matter. So we name it draft, and then we choose the matter ID of the matter we just created. And we can add another step. We're going to do one more. It's going to be called signed. And again, choose that matter ID and save it. And now when you go back to the matter and you create a new matter of that practice area, you can go to your Documents tab and you can see these two folders are created and waiting there for you.
Cool. So how much time do you think that would save you? A little bit of investment at the beginning, right? But once you've got that set up, you could have it automatically triggering all those file folders every time. And especially using something like Clio Launcher, right? You can streamline the process quite a bit. Let's take a look at automated expenses. So anyone in this room charge for photocopies? Probably. You print something off your computer, you want that cost to go back to your client. You go to your photocopier, you want the cost to go back. Is anybody here tracking that with pen and paper? Right? So back in the day, I remember working in a firm that was, maybe 6 people. And we kept a long pad of paper at the photocopy machine. And I remember doing document books, and everybody knows how time-intensive that is. And so we would keep track. We'd put down, like, this is the date, this is how many copies, this is the matter, and so on. And then once in a while, hopefully every day, maybe once a week, maybe the day before we sent out our bills, right? Somebody would go in and they'd add all those expenses, and they hoped that you had the date right, and they hoped the matter number was correct, and that they could read all the writing and all those types of things. So what if we could automate all of those expenses for your copies so that they go directly into Clio? What if we can make that a little bit faster?
So again, let's look at the workflow before Zapier. So we print the pages, go to the copier, maybe do file print.
Yeah, I don't have a robot, so you still physically have to go to the photocopy machine. I'm sorry.
Need to do that.
You can't do that yet. Maybe next year.
You maybe add an entry to a notebook or however you want to track these. And then maybe later, maybe the end of the week, end of the month, whenever, somebody goes into Clio and creates a new expense, and then creates another one, and then creates another one. Goes through the whole list. Let's put on our developer hats and let's look at that workflow and think about what steps provide no value to our day, and maybe we could save some time if we took them away. So printing materials, it's a pretty simple process. You already hit print and it just comes right out. So that one's good. We don't need to automate that anymore. Adding the entry to a notebook, well, you still got to write it down somewhere or put it somewhere, but writing it down in the real world means that Zapier can't get at it. So maybe we need to tweak that one a little bit. And then the last one, creating expenses in Clio, this step is just ripe for automation. It's repeatable, it's tedious to do, and it's something that would fit really great into Zapier. So let's get Zapier to do that. So the new improved workflow, print materials, submit a Google form, and some of you may have guessed, go get a coffee. Because you're done, it will take care of the rest. The question was, can you get the Google form?
Yeah, have the printer make the Google form. That's a follow-up. That's a follow-up for next time.
It's in our robotics session coming up later.
What was that? Exactly. So that's actually what we're suggesting. If you have an old iPad in the office, maybe don't duct tape it. Maybe something like this. Just keep an iPad back there. Use your cell phone. I mean, how many people never have their cell phone out of their back pocket anyway? You can just, keep track of it somewhere. Just type it in quickly, and at least then everyone can read your writing, and it's getting captured.
So this is the Google form that we had set up to do this specific Zap, and it asks for 3 things. The first thing is the matter number. Second thing is the number of pages, and last one is the rate. Black and white, color, and gold foil for those very fancy documents you might have. And it has a different price in each one of those, 35 cents, 50 cents, $10. So when you fill this out, about 5 to 10 minutes later, in Clio, you'll see a new expense. And that expense will have a description. It'll tell you how many copies you made. It'll tell you what the price per page was, and it'll tell you what the matter was. It'll also tie it to the matter, so you can bill this right away. And it'll also calculate the price based on the matter and the per page price. So let's create the Zap, and and I'll walk you through this here, but first let's take a look at what inputs we're going to get. So Zapier is all about inputs and outputs, right? What kind of things do we need in Zapier to create an expense in Clio? Well, we need a quantity. That would be number of pages in this case. We need the rate. We need the matter number or ID. And then finally a description. Now the description is optional, but it's really useful if you're billing your clients and they can see exactly what you did for them. This is the 4 steps of the Zap, and we'll go through each one individually. And I think one important thing to point out is that when you look at a Zap and it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps, that on its all together it looks very daunting, but each step individually is very simple. So we're going to take it one by one. We're going to start with the trigger.
Take a look at them in bite-sized pieces.
So this is a Google form, and if you haven't used a Google form, we're not going to cover that here, but it is pretty simple. It is similar to Google Docs in how you can just add things very quickly and set it up customized to whatever you need, and every time it submits, it'll go into a spreadsheet. Now you pick that spreadsheet from here. You'll authenticate with your Google account, and then you'll pick the worksheet, which for most Google forms is just a single worksheet. And then you're done. That's the trigger. We're ready to go. We can now do the next thing. And the next one is a search. And this one's interesting, I think, because we already have the matter number. Why do we need to search on Clio? And the reason is because we want to get much more information back from Clio. We want to get maybe the matter ID, which is a little bit different, and that's a thing that Clio needs to make the expense properly. And maybe we want the client name, or maybe we want some other piece of information from the matter. And the way this works is you have to take the, well, we'll get into it here. You click this button on the side, and this will open up all of the inputs that are available to you at the time. So we have the form submitted at this time, and we can go into grab the matter number that we entered. And this matter number came from the form submission, and it will go into the search. And that search will go out to Clio and pull out the information that we need. And you'll see us use the output from this a bit later. Next is the action, the first action of 2 actions here. Now, this is a interesting step because it's extracting the cost per page from the rate. And this uses something called formatters, which can be really, really useful if you get into some more advanced Zaps. It takes one value, and it applies some transform to it, and they have so many different types of transforms in this case. You can do some math operation, you can format a date, add and subtract, extract things. The list goes on. In this case, what we want to do is take this value, black and white, 35 cents per page, and we want to turn the text into a number. So somehow we got to go in there and grab that number. We want to pull the 35 cents out, and for color, we want to pull the 50 cents out. It looks like this in Zapier. You have the formatter here, and this is, again, a core piece of Zapier. You can choose what you're working with. In this case, we're working with text. And then once you choose text, you can choose a transform. Now, conveniently, one of the options they have is extract the number. It'll just go into some piece of text, and it'll pull out whatever number there is there. There's a whole number of other ones as well, and I'm sure if you have something that you want to do, if you have some input that you don't know how to use in a later step, you can transform it into something that you can use. So next we have to choose the input. What are we transforming? And we're grabbing the rate from the form submission. Now, Zapier has this really useful step here where it'll show you what your inputs are. It'll say we've got a extract number transformation, and here is the input. And then you hit next, and it'll run that. And if you don't get what you expect on this side, you can go back, change the transform, and try it again. So you can test it in line, and this is kind of the debugging phase. This is where I spend 80% of my day.
Yeah.
So once we're done that step, we can get to the core, the heart of what we're here for. We want to create the expense in Clio. We've been collecting information all up to this point, and now we can finally use it. So the first thing we want to pull in is the date of the expense. And this comes from the Google form, which adds a timestamp. So the time somebody submitted that form will then get submitted as the time that the expense happened. And this is another nice option, or a nice reason why using a Google form is useful, because you no longer have this out of date. You can't mess it up. As long as you fill out the Google form, it'll be up to date and correct.
So you know that you're actually billing your expenses for the time frame they were done, right? You're not like catching up on photocopies from last month and this month's bill.
The next thing is the description, and this one is really interesting, I think, because it collects all of the information we've used so far. Now, we've written out some static text here, and you can see it. This is what we want it to be. We want this to have the dynamic values from the form we have. We don't want it to be the same every time. If we put 200 pages in that Google form, we don't want to see 500 here, right? We can't be static text.
So with the dynamic text, does everybody know what that means when we refer to dynamic text? I'm seeing some no's. So have you ever had a letter in Microsoft Word or a fax cover sheet, and every single time you open it, the date automatically updates? That's dynamic text, right? It's a form field. So it's not a form field, but it's very similar. So this is whatever piece of information in that string is going to change, right? So it might be 50 cents because it's a color copy, or it might be 35 cents because it's in black and white. That's the dynamic part of it. That's the part that it's going to figure out. Okay? So if we take a look at this, the pieces that are dynamic in here, right? So we submitted the Google form, and we have to put in how many copies you made, whether you printed it or photocopied it, whatever you did. Whether you're entering these one at a time or on paper, however you're doing it, you have to put that in. Zapier is also going to extract that rate. So it needs to know, is it black and white? Is it color? Are you using another factor? Maybe you're printing on special paper and charging $1 per page or whatever you need. Then we have the matter number. And the matter number there is again, that one that we extracted from that matter ID. So if you take a look at the left, you'll notice that we have step 1 was grabbing that Google form. It's got step 3 coming in and pulling the rate out. And then step 2, it's the matter number. I know that it's not going 1, 2, 3, but it's fine. It's fine. It's just the way the information is collected. Let's go on to the next one. So perfect. So like when we take a look at this form, we can see that we pulled in the amount. So we're filling in that form field, kind of like you would in a Microsoft Word document with those fields. So it's got the step 1 from the Google form, step 3 extracting the rate, and then step 2 that's going to come in where it's pulling in that matter ID. You don't have to know 1, 3, 2. You just have to pick the one that you need. Perfect. So when we go in here, you can see that it's taking the next step, and it's pulling in the quantity. So what you've got the step 1, and then we're going to go to the next one, and we've got that price extracted. We've got that 50 cents per page or that 35 cents per page, whatever amount you're charging. And then we're extracting that matter. So it's pulling in that matter ID and finding that matter number. So we've got those steps being inputted. Perfect. So when we're looking at this, we've created all of those, and so we now are at that stage where it's going to take the action, and it's actually going to create that expense.
So we made it. We got through all 4 of these steps, and this is an upfront investment. This is time you need to spend ahead of when you'll need it, but then forevermore, it'll do it behind the scenes for you. You won't have to worry about it. It'll save you and anyone in your law firm doing this task a little bit of time each day, and make sure that what they're focusing on is not paperwork or moving things around in Clio or moving it from this application to this application. They're just doing their work and moving on.
We're getting rid of that chunk of non-billable time, right? Cool. So let's take a look. We've got this nice form, but I know nobody ever makes mistakes. right? You ever put something on the wrong matter number? You ever type your matter number wrong? What's going to happen, right? What if somebody goes to that Google form and they put matter ABC and there is no matter ABC or 1, 2, 3? How can we capture that?
So this goes back to the more steps, more power. Your zaps aren't done just because they're working. So if you find a problem with your zap, if you want to expand your zap, you can absolutely do that. We can come back in here and say we discovered that, hey, some of our expenses aren't being attached to matters. What's the deal here? And it turns out somebody was making a typo, or they put in a matter number that doesn't exist. Well, we can extend our zap to handle that. And we can extend it to send this email when somebody makes a typo. There was a problem while processing the form submission. Here's the information about your form submission. I've created the expense, but I need you to fix it. So click here to fix it.
And the important thing about that is that it does still create the expense. So even if somebody made a mistake inputting that information into the Google form, the expense is still in Clio. You haven't lost anything.
So we've got our 4 steps here, and we're just going to expand them out and add another filter. So this time, it's a 2-step filter. We're going to choose what the activity matter name in this case. So if we create the expense and there's no matter attached to it, if we create an expense and there is a matter attached to it, then we're finished. It will not continue. And we can do that by setting this does not exist. So it'll continue if there is no matter. So what will it continue and do? Well, we can add any step that you'd like. Here, I've chosen an email, but this could be a Slack message. This could be a text message. This could be a task in Clio that you create. So it looks like this. We're setting the email statically here. You could pull this in dynamically if you wanted. It can go to anyone in your firm. We've added unable to find matter, and then we've taken a bunch of text and we've pasted it in. And here we're going to do exactly what we did before with the dynamic text. We're going to highlight it. We're going to go find the value we want, and then we're going to select it. And then we're going to find the next thing. Okay, let's highlight it, find the value we want, and select it.
Very much like replacing in document automation, right? So if any of you have attended any of that, you're highlighting that piece of your document that needs to be dynamic and needs to change.
So now, 7 steps. We made it. Ernie teased it before. This is the biggest zap that we'll hit today. You could go bigger, but this is pretty impressive, I think, if you make it to 7 here.
The thing is, though, you don't have to stop. It's not like we just quit at 7. We're giving you an example. If you have something in the back of your mind right now and you're thinking, well, what if I can also do this? You can add on to this.
And we'll grab questions just at the end here.
Absolutely.
So that is that zap, and that is the 2 workflows that we're covering today. A couple things that I wanted to just go back and kind of summarize from this, some takeaways while you're building your zaps. Now, the first one is filters are your friend. So filters will take a zap that is otherwise, or a use case that is otherwise not possible, and it will filter it down, and you can make one zap for this case, and you can make another zap for this case. And if somebody else in your firm wants a different one, they can make that as well. The next is more steps, more power. If you have a zap, don't be afraid to add to it. If you have something that you are doing every day, create a zap for it, add a step, add a step, add a step, until all of your manual, tedious work has been moved into Zapier. Control data with formatters. If you have some input that isn't quite right, some integration that needs that number or that date in a different format, or if you have a date and you want to go forward a month, think about using formatters. There's a lot of really, really good Zapier documentation on this. And because it is a built-in functionality of Zapier, they've got great support for it as well. And finally, supercharge your zaps with dynamic text. There's something really, really magical when you see something in Clio that is perfectly organized with all the correct information. A computer will do exactly what you tell it to, And so it'll never make a mistake as long as you've chosen the correct thing. So set it up once, and it'll work great.
They're very literal, right? You wish that it would sometimes just know what you wanted it to do. Doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a bit about resources. One thing that we can do is, of course, you've got the Clio Help Center. You can always go to support.clio.com. You can search for Zap. You can search for Zapier. You're going to get a lot of stuff there. We'd like to, a little bit later, we're going to get the 2 workflows that we showed you today. We're going to get those up there as articles so that you can walk through them. I'm not saying you necessarily have to use these exact examples, but maybe it's similar to something else that you want to do, right? We want to give you some ideas for other things that you want to do. We're just opening up some possibilities. The other one is that Zapier support site that Jordan referred to. And then, of course, somebody's heard of Google? Yeah. So if you go into Google and you put in, Zapier, Clio, and then whatever the other program is that you want to integrate with, Twitter, Facebook, I don't know, maybe. Trello. What about Calendly? What about Wunderlist? What about any number of applications that you guys might be using on your phones, on your any mobile device, maybe in your firm? See if that is something that'll integrate with Clio, with Zapier. Hundreds of applications to do that. And then if we take a look here, it will show you, it will take you to a custom page within the Zapier website for Clio, Zapier, and whatever that thing is. So for example, if we look for Clio in Slack, it's now showing us all of those different kinds of things that you can do with Zapier for Clio and Slack.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so that is all we have for you today. We are really thankful that you all decided to come out and join us today, and we'd be really happy to take questions. One other thing to note, we built a lot of zaps that we couldn't fit into this, and we went a lot further than we've shown here. So if there's something advanced that you want to do, please talk to us or come to the Clio Lab after. So with
and something else, before we get to questions, something else to mention, there are pre-built zaps as well. So for those of you who haven't seen or heard that yet, you can go onto the Zapier site there, and it will offer up some pre-built ones that may also work for you if you're not quite ready to start building out your own. And Jordan and I are also available to help you get started on your zaps if you like. So
yeah, so let's get started with questions right here in the front.
So when you did the very last step on the last one with the filter with the email,
Yeah.
I guess I must have missed or was looking down. How do they know what email address to send that to?
Right, so the question is, how did I choose the email in the last step of the Zap? So that I just typed in. So if there's a person in your firm that you want to always handle these things, then you could statically add it. If you want it to go to multiple people, you could add in multiple emails. One thing that we didn't get into was that you can, with Google Forms, collect the information about who's submitting that, if they're logged into their G Suite account, for example. And then that would be in the Google form as well. So you could say, okay, you made a mistake, I'm going to send it to you so you can go fix it.
You could also maybe, I'm just thinking of that now, but have one of the entries on the Google form be like a multiple choice of the various email addresses
Totally.
in your firm.
Yes, yeah, you could also use a multiple drop-down of emails.
Follow-up is what you just said. Where is your list of, or where would we crowdsource like great zaps that Clio users have developed for their own workflows?
Yeah, the question is, can we crowdsource zaps that other people are using with Clio? So Zapier, they do have shared zaps. You can share them, although it's not quite like a marketplace, like if this, then that.
the other thing, if you're looking for sort of the most popular ones, if you do go to Clio, the Clio portion of Zapier, if you look for Clio on Zapier, it will give you a list at the top. I think it's like 20 or 30. It'll show you like the 20 or 30 most popular zaps that people are using with Zapier and Clio, and that might be a good place to start.
I mean, I meant the ones that you just said that you've developed some better ones.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I don't know if we can share them, but let's follow up after. I'll pull up my account and we can see what we can do. Yeah, other questions? Yes?
After the new integration is launched in November, you have to reconnect with Clio?
Yeah, so the question is, after the new integration is launched, do we have to reconnect to Clio and redo those steps. So yes, the way that the new integration will work, the old one will exist, the new one will exist. If you have existing zaps, you'll go into those zaps and say you have a create matter trigger. You'll just go into that one and say, okay, I want to use the new one, and then fill in the couple information. Other steps that you have in there, those can all stay the same. Yes?
Any suggestions for when you put together like this drawn-out zap, and then you go and it goes, up, it didn't work. And they
Yeah.
don't really give you a fantastic clue as to why it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's the only thing, my only criticism of Zapier is like, why not?
Yeah, the question is, how do you find problems when things break? And that I struggled with.
I think that's the bane of
while I
Jordan's
was building
existence,
these,
isn't it?
yeah. No, they do have interesting, a good page where you can see all of the logs from all of the triggers that ran. So if you had a trigger that ran and it made a mistake, you can go in and see the log. And sometimes it's a little bit cryptic, but you can see which step it died on. And it'll probably tell you, it'll give you inputs and outputs. You can say, okay, well, this output wasn't exactly what I thought. So maybe that I have to fix that next step. Yeah.
They do a really good customer support, actually. So I had one break, and I just, like, I basically just clicked their help desk, and they went in and
They fixed it for you.
it and said, if you have any more questions, just ask. So
Nice.
they're actually really responsive.
So Zapier might fix it for you. Yes.
For the example that you gave with the automatic file folders,
Yes.
where is that pulling from the integration? Is it Google Docs? Is it Dropbox? Where are you getting the template folders?
So the question is, where are we getting the template folders in that first example?
You can decide what you want the folders to be, right? And then the
Yeah.
folders are created within the Clio documents. Yeah.
So-
So that's why I was saying a really good thing to use with that would then be Clio Launcher, so that when it automatically creates the file folders in the Clio document storage, the Clio Launcher will take it from there, and that's where you can do the, click on the document, open, edit, save, close, without having to do the download and upload. I find a lot of people are using that third-party integration for document storage because they didn't want to do the download and upload, right? But with Clio Launcher, you don't have to do that anymore.
Cool. So we'll do gentleman at the back in the black shirt.
When you're dealing with zaps that have to do with file uploads, updates, or anything like that with an external service, are there limits to the amount of actions or the size of the files that can be moved into or out of Clio?
The question is, are there limits to the size of the files you can move in and out of Clio, specifically with Zapier?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I would imagine they would have some sort of file limit in Zapier.
I don't know what the file limit with Zapier is, or if there is one, but there is one with Clio. So I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
I think it's something like 50 gigs.
It's quite
large.
It's quite large.
Yeah,
So you can only, like when you're uploading stuff into Clio, a lot of people will want to grab, an entire repository of documents and upload them at the same time, and we have to suggest they break them into smaller pieces. Whatever the item is that's being put into Clio has to be under that cap. It is on our support site, and if you want to hold on at the end, I can always look it up for you.
Yeah, so the question is how much latency between when something happens and when a zap is triggered. There's two answers to that question. The first one, it depends on the kind of trigger. So certain triggers are instantaneous. Something happens, and then that service tells Zapier that it happened. Those are instantaneous. The new integration does more of those. Google Forms is the other kind. The other kind is it happens every 15 minutes. Well, it checks every 15 minutes. So it'll be as long as 15 minutes before your zap fires. Gentleman at the back.
I've tried doing it before where it's supposed to access a matter on Clio, but maybe I would get the matter ID wrong. If it's like 00037-Hernandez,
Mm-hmm.
would I put just 37 in the Google Forms when I was submitting it, or would I put 00037-Hernandez?
Yeah, the question is, when I'm accessing a matter on Clio or doing a search like we did in the example, how exact does it have to be? Can you use 37 if it's 00037? It is a fuzzy match. So 37 should work. It'll take that, it'll send it over, and it'll find the closest match to it. So if you are too fuzzy, if you did Fernandez, for example, it might not get the matter you hoped for. So I'd recommend sticking with numbers. If there's a bunch of leading zeros, you can probably leave those off and it'll be fine. Yes?
I just want to make a comment on the gentleman who asked how long it takes. If you can't wait, you can go to your Zapier page to Zaps,
Yes.
and actually pull it and run it right then.
Yes, yeah.
And then it'll go right automatically.
Yeah, you can manually trigger zaps as well, yeah. Totally true. Very useful when you're debugging and writing a new zap as well. Gentleman in the purple.
Have you found a good way to set up this app to send like a text message or automated text to a client, like when they fill out a form or when their file's been updated?
Yeah, question, can you send an automated text message when a person's updated their form or some to remind them, things like that? You can send a text message. If you want to say, send them a text message at a certain time, that becomes a little bit more tricky. There are zaps, there are things in Zapier where you can add a delay. So something happens, you can add a up to 30-day delay until another event happens.
Okay. Do you need to integrate another program to send a text message, or does
Zapier actually has something in it that will send a text message, yeah.
Okay.
But you can also integrate with Twilio, or I think there might be another service that does it if you need more advanced features.
And there was a lady in the front as well. Did you
Oh.
still have a question from earlier, or we're awesome?
And then somebody, yes.
Can you create something between Clio and Excel to create custom reports like on a monthly basis?
Question is, can you create custom reports with Excel using Zapier?
So in other words, to clarify, are you thinking like it would automatically take data out of Clio and populate it into Excel so the Excel document would become the resulting report?
You cannot do scheduled zaps. So I don't believe so. Yes.
You can actually connect Zapier to your calendar and just set a triggering event on your calendar to schedule zaps.
Oh, fantastic.
Again, that's the workaround I found.
I love our
Awesome.
own crowdsourcing here.
Yeah,
so
no, that's great.
Did you want to repeat that?
Yeah, so you can create, you can tie Zapier to your calendar, which you can then create triggers for your zap. Trigger your zap on a certain time. Scott, you have some.
If you think you have a zap that is fantastic, send it to me.
Yeah, that's a
I
cool
was
tip.
actually thinking that.
When I was preparing for the slides for this talk, I actually had a client on the phone teach me a very simple zap that got the idea with folders. This was before we even had the new trigger for create folders. Dropbox has a create folder action as well. So he's like, oh, I use this to create these 5 specific,
Oh, sorry. So when I was preparing for this, I had a client call in support. I work in support at Clio, and just said, yeah, I have this app that creates matters in Dropbox for me whenever I create new matter. And that was actually what taught me that. I'm like, oh, that is actually a really good idea. I guess that
Yeah.
works. One thing, though, is things like OneDrive. OneDrive doesn't have a create folder action. So it's each individual app has different actions and triggers. But yeah, with Clio, we created a document folder create action. So
I think what's
if
really
you have a good zap, send it to me, scott.hamilton@clio.com.
I think what's really cool about this is that, every single person in this room could probably come up with, none of you work the same, right? And we do our best to make Clio and all of the products appeal to all of you and work their best for all of you. But you're still going to have something different that every single one of you wants to do because it's unique to your firm or your workflow or your preferences. And, we can try to give examples. We can try to put together support articles that give you some examples. But when it comes right down to it, what I'd suggest is, you're going for lunch now, right? So grab your notebook, make a few notes and say, hey, here's some things that made me start thinking about. I want to see if it's possible. Right? I'm going to do a quick search. See if the time investment is something I want to make that happen. Like we were saying, I'll be in the Smart Bar for the rest of the day. Scott's also in the Smart Bar. We work at Clio Support. We both work 5 to 1 Vancouver time, so that's the time to call us, bright and early in the morning. Alternatively, Jordan is in the Clio Labs. So you can always come by and visit with him. We're happy to have you guys. If there's something that you think about in the next little while and you want to come down and talk to us and say, hey, I had an idea, we'll do our best to help you. We'll get you started. I think we have maybe time for one more question.
A couple more minutes. Yes, at the back.
So I do a lot
documents to specific folders. Because as of now, I believe when you connect a document into the Clio Matter, it just dumps it into the document folder, and then you have to go and, manually put it into whatever folder you like.
Right, it goes into the main sort of document
Right.
area for that matter, and you might want it in drafts.
Sure, or like in the discovery folder, or in the, whatever you might be looking for.
I feel like that's a fun project.
I know. Well, there you go.
I don't know.
That is a huge thing, and they actually told me I needed to go to Clio Labs and talk to you guys.
Right.
Because it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I would love to dig into that more. I don't know off the top of my head if
Yeah.
Zapier, or maybe Scott does.
I have to look into Clio, but with the Dropbox
Example that I gave earlier. Thank you. Sorry. Not sure about Clio because that was the new document create document folder. I'm not sure if that allows you to specify a path, or if it's just going to put it into the root directory of the matter or whatever. With something like Dropbox, I know for sure you can specify a path and even use dynamic text to choose that path. So Dropbox, it needs to be last name, comma, first name. You can take the client name from an earlier step, format it so that use a formatter so that it's last name, comma, first name, and then use that as the path for the final step.
Yeah. And if you need that, come down to the Clio Lab and tell us and say, hey, I really would like, this would make a big difference to my day. The more of you that say that, the more likely we'll have time and resources to do it. Thank you guys so much for
Awesome.
coming. We'll be around. Come talk with us.